What's going on, Friday fans? Thank you all for joining me as always. And now that we've gotten Jason versus Carrie, Jason in Manhattan, and even Jason going to hell, I guess all that's left is that inevitable matchup, Freddy versus Jason. So, wait a second. Now I feel like I'm missing one. Oh shit. Released in 2001, Jason X takes place in the year 2010 when a scientist, played by the legendary David Cronenberg, wants to study Jason Voorhees to understand why he keeps coming back to life, while a colleague and final girl Rowan is strongly opposed to that idea. She's under the belief that they would be better off just cryogenically freezing this man until they can figure out what to do with him. And I just have to say right out of the gate, I already have a few issues with this movie and we're just getting started. First of all, how did they manage to capture Jason here? Last thing I remember, wasn't he dragged to hell? And secondly, he looks way too normal here. The last time we saw Jason, his head was bulging out of his mask and he was all messed up. I mean, even when you first see Jason, like with that mask, you can see the eye holes and that dude looks completely normal. Anyways, with all of that aside, as anybody can guess here, of course Jason escapes his constraints and kills all of the guards as well as David Cronenberg, rest in peace. We then get the sequence where Rowan is able to bait Jason into this cryogenic chamber to freeze him, but since we all know Jason is codependent, he makes sure Rowan's along for the ride.
Cryogenic breach.
And after they're both frozen, this movie picks up 445 years later. Yes, that's right, we're now in the year 2455. And here, we get to meet our new cast of characters from Earth 2. And I swear I did not get high and make this movie up. Did I? While on a scavenging expedition to a now uninhabitable Earth, the one thing this movie probably got right, they discover Jason's frozen body in the chamber and Rowan. And I gotta give Jason some respect here. Even frozen solid, you cannot stop this man from doing his thing. We then get a quick shot letting us know not to expect much from the CGI in this movie. And we're on to the Grendel, the spaceship where this entire movie takes place. And here we get a little taste of the technology as Rowan is reanimated by nanomachines and Jason is pronounced dead. But this is the 10th fucking movie in this franchise, so everybody knows what's coming next. Yes, of course, Jason springs back to life because a few teenagers are having sex, and we get a top 5 kill in the franchise, if not the just flat out best in the series, where Jason dips Adrian's head in liquid nitrogen and just smashes it against the counter, like he's Sub-Zero doing a fatality.
God, I love that.
And personally, I'm honored to share my first name with this kill. After a quick dialogue between Rowan explaining to the professor that Jason just cannot die, we get to meet the incredible Sergeant Brodsky. And although we've had a few rough entries in a row here with this franchise, they've at least done a good job of introducing us to a few badass characters. You know, we had Julius, and following him, we had Steven and Creighton Duke in Part 9, and now we get Sergeant Brodsky. And after everybody on the Grendel learns that Jason is alive again, we get this scene that's totally not ripped off from Alien, where Sergeant Brodsky and his team go looking for Jason. And we get this gem.
What's his condition?
He's screwed.
To think, there were a few people that actually gave this movie credit for its witty dialogue. And I don't want to sound overly negative here, so I will say I really like this shot. And when we get down to Jason and Brodsky, we get this fun little moment.
It's gonna take more than a poke in the ribs to put down this old dog. Yeah, that ought to do it.
And a perfect example of a few rare times that the humor actually landed in this movie. Sadly, that's the last we see of Sergeant Brodsky.
Liar!
Jason then kills the pilot, causing the Grendel to crash into a space station. Meaning, if you want to go in technicalities, I believe Jason now hands down has the highest body count in slasher history. Good for you, Jason. He then proceeds to the lab and finds his beloved machete. And then we get another one of these moments that, I'll admit, it's cheesy as hell. But I always enjoyed it.
Guys, it's okay. He just wanted his machete back. Whew.
Now at this point, the rest of the crew decide they're going to try to escape in the shuttle, but it needs fuel. And we get this moment where Rowan finds Brodsky still alive, baby, and Kinza leaves everybody else to die trying to take the shuttle herself. But in the end, karma will always get you. Or, you know, forgetting to release the fuel line, that'll do it too. One or the other. After it looks like these three are about to be killed, Brodsky fends off Jason just long enough for the new and improved sex bot to come in and kick some serious Jason ass. And on a side note, between KM14 and Brodsky, did anybody else get some weird Matrix vibes from this movie? Whoa. Anyways, after seemingly killing Jason, the group is able to call for help, but little did our crew know that while waiting for their help to arrive, Jason was being healed by nanomachines as he conveniently died right in the medical bay. And here he is, folks, Uber Jason. Close enough. And after a rematch with KM14, where he fares a little bit better this time,
You guys might want to run.
Waylander pulls a self-sacrifice where he blows himself and Jason up so everybody else can escape. But since Jason never fucking dies in these movies, their last effort is to make a distraction to buy themselves enough time to get away. And again, in a movie with some pretty bad story and dialogue, this scene is kinda fun.
Hey, you want a beer?
Or do you want to smoke some pot?
Or we can have premarital sex.
We love premarital sex.
Like, I genuinely laughed my ass off with the sleeping bag moment. We get a last-ditch effort here by Jason, which by this point of the movie is just ridiculous. But Brodsky saves the day one final time, and this movie is finally over. When it comes to Jason X, hear me out, guys. I know there are two camps with this movie. There are people that feel like it just took a complete shit all over the lore and the history of Friday the 13th, which, yeah, it definitely did. And there's also a camp of people that can admit that this movie's sort of a guilty pleasure as it's so bad, it's good. And every time I rewatch this movie, I do tend to find myself in that second group. Now give me a chance here. I'm not saying this is a great movie. This isn't even a good movie. But to get right into my positives here, this movie is entertaining as hell. Not always for the best reasons, but to me, I would rather watch a Friday the 13th that's at least entertaining, even if it's ridiculous, than one that's just boring. To go right along with that point, I think they did pretty good with the pacing here. I really don't feel like there's many moments in this movie that just drag. Like, don't get me wrong, there are some bad moments in this movie, there's a lot of them. But to me, it's always a good time. At least it's entertaining. My next positive is this is a pretty funny entry. A lot of times it's funny for the wrong reasons. Like, a lot of the moments they wrote into the script to be funny, those are kind of some of the worst moments. Like, some of the lines in this movie are just terrible.
Oh, this sucks on so many levels!
But really, a lot of the humor comes with just how ridiculous it is. And my final positive for this entry is that we get a few strong characters here. Now, don't get me wrong, everybody beyond these few are some of the worst in the series. This is definitely something that goes in the good and the bad category. But when I'm talking about the strong characters, obviously you have two. You have Sergeant Brodsky, who's amazing. That dude stands up to Jason as far as he just doesn't die. And he's kind of reminiscent of Steven from Part 9, whereas he's always kind of there to save everybody when they need him. So I love Sergeant Brodsky here. And in that same line of thinking, Rowan was a badass final girl. It's nice to see a character like this, like she's so capable of handling herself and even helping other people. And I think her performance was the strongest in the first half of this movie. But Rowan is an awesome final girl in my opinion. She's a total badass. Now when we get into the negatives, just like the last few entries, I still have more negatives than positives, definitely. And I guess we'll start with just the premise. Jason in space.
Why? Why? What? Why?
I know a few other horror franchises did this before. To me, it just feels so gimmicky, it's ridiculous. My second negative is gonna be that this movie is not scary at all. Definitely a tonal shift here from previous entries. This plays out more like a sci-fi action movie, in my opinion, than it does any type of horror or slasher film. Number 3 is going to be the god-awful CGI in this movie. We were right around the Phantom Menace era of CGI in the late 90s to early 2000s, where a lot of movies hadn't quite figured it out yet. And especially for a movie like this that didn't really have the budget of some of these other, like Star Wars, that still couldn't pull it off. But the CGI in this movie makes it age horribly. And along the lines of the terrible premise and the fact that it's not a scary movie, to me, I would put this as another negative, that this kind of failed at everything it was trying to do. Like, this failed as a Friday the 13th movie, and this failed as a sci-fi movie. So they tried to combine these two worlds, and in my opinion, they did both of them pretty poorly. My next negative on my list is that I did not like the look of either Jason here. I don't think either looked as bad as Part 9 or Part 8, but the first Jason of this movie just felt like too human. Like, for me to buy this version of Jason, we would have to ignore Parts 4 through 9 completely. Or at least the end of 4 where he got killed. Like, I thought this was supposed to be zombie Jason. I'm not sure what's going on here. And then I know a lot of people loved Uber Jason. When I first saw the movie, I thought he was pretty cool. But the more I rewatch this entry, I just kind of laugh every time I see him standing there, like, all menacing. Like, I've heard this comparison before from other people, but he just reminds me of Super Shredder from Secret of the Ooze. So every time we get to this moment in Jason X, all I can think of is the damn ninja rap. And then finally, my last negative here is just the writing in this movie is beyond bad. The story of this movie is terrible, and the dialogue is probably even worse. There are a few lines in here that actually made me chuckle a little bit, but for a majority of the dialogue in this movie, like, I just wanted to turn my head away from the screen. It's that bad. And the story's not much better. There's really not much to this story beneath the surface level. But that's gonna do it for Jason X, everybody. This is certainly what I would call a guilty pleasure of mine. While this belongs nowhere in the top of my list, not even anywhere near the top half of my list, this movie is entertaining. As bad as the movie is, I dare you to watch this with a couple friends and tell me that you don't have a good time with it, for better or worse. I'm definitely anxious to hear about this one. Let me know what you thought about Jason X. Is it an abomination? Is it one of your favorites? Or is it a guilty pleasure like it is for me? Let me know down here in the comments. Please be sure to subscribe right over here so you don't miss any future content. And if you're enjoying my channel, please be sure to check out a few more of these Friday the 13th reviews right over here. And until next time, we'll see you guys for the most ambitious crossover of all time. Freddy vs. Jason.